Honorable President IPSA, Professor Santosri Pandit Ma'am, Dynamic General Secretary of All India Political Science Association, Professor Sanjeev Kumar Sharma ji, and we have here today amongst us a galaxy of Honorable Vice Chancellors, former Vice Chancellors. I have the honor to address Professor Jayanta Kumar Mahapatra ji, Professor R. Thandavan, Chancellor Srijud Mahbubul Haq, and Dr. M. Nazneen Hussain, distinguished invitees, panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, I would like to offer my sincere gratitude and thanks to the organizers, particularly to Professor Sanjeev Kumar Sharma ji, for having invited me to this conference. And I would also like to congratulate Professor, our Chancellor, Mahbubul Haq, for his dynamic leadership in organizing the first All India Political Science Conference in Northeast India. I compliment you, sir, for your leadership and vision that you have established. Now, I, as a political science student, we have here today amongst us various representatives from various parts of India. In this context, in this 59th All India Political Science Conference, I would like to pose a series of questions in front of you. Not necessarily that I have the answers, but I believe in these days, these issues would perhaps find its resonance in our deliberations. Question arises, what is the state of discipline of political science today, particularly in the context of India? Secondly, how does Northeast India contribute to the study of the discipline? Thirdly, what is the scope of the discipline in the light of NEP 2020? Where would the discipline fit in the framework of liberal arts? Fourth, what is the nature of political science research? Where do we stand today? Fifth, how far political science could be an attractive career option? In other words, the so-called market demand of the subject and kind of value addition that we need to make in order to be continuously relevant in our society. Now, coming to the context of Northeast India, it is said that with more than 270 ethnic groups and 180 languages, Northeast India is policymakers' nightmare, but a delight for the social science researchers and political scientists. As all the classical subjects which are so dear to our discipline, we find its ramifications in our Northeast India. Some of the issues that perhaps it has contributed to the study of political science from the region are the question of ethnicity and ethnic identity. The nature of ethnicity, constructivist, the instrumentalist, and the primordial dimension of ethnicity in this part of the world. Then secondly, what we find is the functioning of asymmetrical federalism in the region, like the functioning of Sixth Schedule, the development, autonomous council, etc. I do not have time, but I have written a paper. Later on, I can submit it. Then thirdly, another dimension that requires proper etiological and proper analysis by the students of political science is the growth of militancy in the region. Since 1950s, the region has witnessed the growth of militancy, initially with Naga National Council and later on by NSCN and also other parties in Mizoram, Assam, and so on. Fourth, the Northeast India can be depicted as the habitat of democracy. Why? Because if accommodation of diversity is the hallmark of a vibrant democracy, the Northeast India can definitely claim to be the natural habitat of democracy, because more than 270 ethnic groups, more than 180 languages are being accommodated. Otherwise, just imagine if all these groups, if all these ethnic groups had demanded separation or secessionism, more than 180 countries would have been created in this part of the world. So the northeastern people, the tribal people, non-tribal people know the process of accommodation, how to accommodate diversity in the vast part of this northeast region. The fifth dimension of Northeast India that has contributed is the foreign policy implications, particularly the study of Act East policy and sub-regional initiative like BIMSTEC, BCIM, Ganga Mekong Cooperation, so on and so forth. In fact, generally it is argued that Northeast India is the periphery. In fact, one author talked about periphery strikes back. But after 2014-15, what we have seen is the emergence of Northeast India as the core of Indian politics and India's foreign policy. With the launching of the transformation of Look East policy to Act East policy, Northeast India has become the foci of India's foreign policy. The Indo-Pacific or the Bay of Bengal initiative, all are being talked about in the context of Northeast India. So therefore, Northeast India is now emerging from that periphery to the core. The sixth issues of political science that confront the region are the citizenship debate, the issues of immigration. I have recently written a book on CAN and NRC, the politics of history. In fact, the region is being confronted with the issues of immigration and foreigners' problem. I believe these issues will be discussed in the deliberations in our political science conference. The seventh issue that requires scholarly attention is perhaps the management of national and international border. We have villages after villages in Northeast India. Those are bordering between Myanmar and India. For example, the Longwa village in the Mon district of Nagaland, it falls in between Myanmar and India. So what we see today, the most of these ethnic groups, 270 ethnic groups, are by and large, they're transnational communities having relationship across border. So how do you define border in the context of Northeast India is another such challenge in the context of Northeast India. Now, so in the process, what I argue, and I have written about that Northeast, the kind of image that we had, people used to talk about the stepmotherly attitude of the center. But for last 6-7 years, what has happened was Northeast is becoming a part of India's core politics. In fact, many ethnic groups who were struggling, they were indulging in minority or any kind of, militant politics, they are now coming under Rainbow Coalition. So a political conceptualization, a new notion has emerged that is called Rainbow Coalition, under which various ethnic groups have been brought under one rubric of political formulation. So slowly and gradually, the attitude that Northeast India was exploited, that New Delhi used to act as the stepmother, so-called stepmother, this attitude has been changing. Why Northeast India is so critical is because Northeast India is situated in 3 geographical areas. One is with South Asia, that is with our relationship with Bangladesh. Then with Southeast Asia, our relationship with Thailand, Myanmar, and of course you may include China here, and with Himalayan countries like Nepal and Bhutan. Conclusively, I would like to draw your attention to one question which has been very proactively put forwarded by some political scientists by saying that with the emergence of a new political formulation for last 6, 7, or 10 years, the democracy is in decline. Some of the political scientists, in fact, with the recent election, one political scientist in New Delhi said that India's republic has been throttled with the support of the public, I believe this is an extreme simplification about the nature and functioning of democracy by a few political scientists from New Delhi. How you determine democracy? Democracy is determined by the functioning of institutions, by functioning of policies, by functioning of checks and balances, and how the provisions of the constitutions are implemented in letter and spirit. I do not believe that a saga has come where we indulge in any kind of discrimination when it comes to policy, when it comes to the offering of beneficiary to the people like Atal Amrit Abhijan or Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Yojana or Atal Pension, whatever you call about. There is no systematic discrimination. There is no institutional discrimination that is taking place. So therefore, some of the viewpoints that is given by some political scientists that Indian democracy is in challenge, I believe is not a correct perspective. Yes, of course, some of the issues are now getting a new perspective. For example, issues of inclusion, issues of secularism. These are some of the issues that require further deliberations. You just cannot possibly impose one perspective on the whole nature and functioning of Indian democracy. So I do not accept this argument that Indian democracy is in decline. In fact, India always boasts of civilizational democracy. Indian state is a civilizational state. We have the greatest heritage of inclusion of all kinds of people. When Jews were persecuted all across, particularly in Germany, it was India who gave shelter to the Jewish people. In fact, when Israel came, the first resolution the government of Israel took in the parliament was to thank the people of India because of the shelter, because of help given to the people, those people at that point of time. Talk about the Parsis. The Parsis from Iran, the way they were accommodated. In fact, when Hitler invaded Poland, more than 700 people, they were sent across a ship in the ocean. Nobody took care of those 700 people. But all those people, 500 male, 200 children, they were given shelter by Maharaja of Jamnagar, Digvijay Singh. So we have examples galore that Indian society is structurally an inclusive society. Our nation state is a civilizational nation state where all exist, but with certain amount of respect to the core civilizational Sanatani principles of this country. With this word, I welcome all of you as being the advisor of education to the Government of Assam. I feel deeply honored for having invited me to this conference, and I'm grateful to Mahbubul Haqji for his dynamic leadership, and also to Professor Sharmaji for his dynamic leadership in giving a vibrant character to All India Political Science Association. Thanking you. Namaskar. Jai Hind.